Do you think it is morally okay to have strategic friendships when trying to build a career?
Is that a trick question? It's weird because everybody knows me from motorsport, but my entire life was made up of being on stage.
Didn't you end up with a racing license?
Yeah, I did actually. Anybody who owned a supercar that I knew in South Africa would be like, do you want to go for a ride? And I'd be like, no, I want to drive it. I think I can be quite savage.
How long have you been also a star on Maid in Chelsea?
I strike that from my profile. Innocent, young, completely naive. I didn't want that in my life. It was a lot of drama and unnecessary arguments. We don't really talk about that.
Do you experience difficulty being a woman in motorsport?
Yeah. 50% of people who are horrible and don't like the change. I remember driving home and crying the whole way home. I still get scared. I'm not going to lie. I get imposter syndrome. I also have been used throughout my career and I don't like.
Emma, in researching your story, I've been surprised, shocked and inspired. And in many ways, it's given me the context into how you've got to where you are today. Many people will probably recognise you from a variety of different things, whether they followed you in TV or in presenting. However, Emma, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, first of all. This year, my name is Emma Walsh. I am a presenter and content creator from a little town called Somerset West in Cape Town, South Africa. And I've been living in the UK for about 13 years now.
And why? Why was that decision made to leave Cape Town, where no doubt we wouldn't be having to put the heater on in the back of our studio over there right now and come over to miserable old England?
I know. I actually just got back from Cape Town, so it's a big adjustment to the cold. Long story short, I used to be a performer. I'm sure we'll get into this. And I moved over to the UK doing Grease, the musical. So that was the reason why I originally came over to the UK.
And was performing, being in the world of musical theatre, was that something that you were around when you grew up? Paint us a picture of what life was like, maybe when you moved, or write those earliest memories that kind of formed the things that you love today.
My parents were a very famous pop group in the UK in the late 70s, which is really strange. As kids growing up, we didn't quite believe it until our parents used to show us all the gold records, pictures of meeting, the Queen and the Prince and all their videos of screaming fans. And so they were a really big pop group in the UK. My dad moved over to South Africa when I was born to kind of get away from the limelight. And so my childhood was growing up on the beach, living a great life as a kid, but very much involved in the music industry, following my parents' footsteps. So there was a lot of singing in the family. Every event was a song. But yeah, we did a lot of musical theatre growing up, and my parents played in a band called Shiraz, so that every weekend they were playing a gig, which we would get involved in. So my childhood was very much growing up in the music industry, which I kind of followed into a career.
So there was no other question for you. You weren't at that point surrounded by the world of motorsports or TV, just everything was creative and performing. So how did you, when you moved over here, how did that transpire into you starting to do things in theatre?
So I was definitely a tomboy growing up. I think I liked sports as well. I did everything. I was dancing, I was singing, I was drama, I was running, I was playing tennis. I was doing everything I could as a kid. And in Somerset West, where we grew up, there was literally nothing to do as kids for kids parties besides Laser Quest and karting. So I used to go down to the karting track all the time as a kid, and I was really good. I don't know. I beat all the boys. I really loved it. My dad used to watch F1. He's a big sport fan. So I think the love of Formula One came from my dad. No one in the house would watch it with him. And I just loved the sound of the cars. I was just obsessed with learning how they drove these cars around the track. I thought it was incredible and the talent was immense. So I used to go to the karting track and I absolutely loved it. And there was a part of me that wanted to be this racing driver, but there was a part of me that wanted to be this pop star. And in South Africa, number one woman in motorsport was just not a thing. I mean, I'm 40 now, so it was a long time ago. It wasn't a thing back then. And also money-wise in South Africa, there wasn't much going on. So it wasn't really a
prospect.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a hard decision. It was either you're going to be following your footsteps as a dancer and a singer like your parents, or somehow you're going to be a racing driver. And that just wasn't going to happen. So carried on with the dancing and singing, and made a long career out of it. And it's weird because everybody knows me from motorsport, but my entire life was made up of being on stage.
Well, I think a lot of people from, say, my circles know you from motorsport, because we sit in things like at the weekend, the live action show at the NEC, where you're there with David Croft, one of the longest standing F1 commentators, proper pinchy moment. It's not the first time you've done it either. So maybe many people from my circles and where I go know you from the world of motorsport.
Which is why my voice is like this, by the way. Just come off the back of
I will say, when we were sat in the audience, it was smoky and kind of coughable environment. Yes. So being down on the actual main area with cars sliding about a foot away from you.
Yeah, I was swallowing the rubber coming off the tyres as well as the smoke. And between each show, we've got about 15 minutes to reset. And it is literally like wipe your face off with just dirt everywhere. So yeah, my throat is a little bit croaky today, but...
And that brings us on brilliantly to kind of some of the things to summarise what you're doing now before we go into them, because you've explained what your childhood kind of looked up, things that kind of sparked where you got to now. And I'm really excited to kind of put out there. Didn't you end up with a racing licence? That girl from the track.
Yeah, I did.
Have you still got a racing licence?
I actually just renewed it as well. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I was offered the opportunity, and in the back of my mind when I moved here, being on track, even in a car, wasn't a thing for me when I was a kid. It was just a dream. And I think anybody who owned a supercar that I knew in South Africa would kind of be like, do you want to go for a ride? And I'd be like, no, I want to drive it. Like, I don't want to sit in the passenger seat. So yeah, growing up, I wanted to learn how to drive these cars on track. And I had the opportunity with, I think it was a red letter days, those like vouchers that you get.
£99 free laps.
Yeah. 3 laps, 3 of your best laps. So my boyfriend at the time's parents bought this for me as a gift. And I was like, this is incredible. And got to drive this Ferrari around a track. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And the guy was like, you're really good. And I was like, can we do more laps? They were like, no, you just paid for 3. So how'd you get? And I was hooked. I was like, God, this is amazing. And so I started doing more of those. And eventually, long story short, I was offered a chance to do my license, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I just thought, how cool would it be to get a racing license and say to like my friends back home, like, I have this racing license. So I did. I got my racing license. And
you definitely summarised it as, I'm a racing driver now.
I'm like, I'm a racing driver.
The little WhatsApp bio.
Yeah. I was like, look at this picture.
Amazing. So all of those things, how does a girl, when you're growing up with those passions in mind, something that you want to do, how do you actually turn that into a reality? How was it that you didn't end up in a 9-to-5, working a kind of what we consider to be rather a normal life in the UK, where we see you from the outside? You're in TV, as you said, from growing up learning performing arts and musicals. You can see how that's kind of transpired into that. But presenting, motorsport, all these opportunities, does it start with just trying to build a profile, build a following? How did you do it?
Don't get me wrong, my profile looks very glamorous, but trust me when I say I have worked in every job you can imagine. I've done 9-to-5, I've sold insurance, I've been in real estate, I've done every promotion under the sun. I've dressed as a Teletubby in a kid's store. I've been at a petrol station selling coupon. Like, I've really done it all. I didn't come from a wealthy background. I didn't have that support financially when I moved over. I came over, I had nothing, literally no money. And I had to make a plan. So I was auditioning at the time, which is, as you know, not paid. So I joined a promotion agency. I got a 9-to-5 job in an events company. I did everything I could just to survive. And eventually I decided that the performing world was not enough for me. And it just wasn't getting paid. You don't get paid a lot of money for what you do. You're working 8 shows a week. And it's difficult. I came from South Africa. Even though I've got a British passport, they weren't accepting me as somebody who'd studied in a drama school here. So I'd always get down to the last 2 people, and then they'd be like, well, you didn't study at a drama school here, so we're not going to take you on for the job. And I'm talking about 3-month auditioning. So it was a lot. I don't even know how I built a profile from that. I started working in the industry. I got my license. It was all a case of networking, meeting the right people at the right time, getting my license, meeting a few YouTubers. And I just went from there. I honestly had no plan to change my career. I didn't expect myself to get into what I'm doing now. I mean, it was not planned at all.
Because time also flies. How long have you been also a star on Maid in Chelsea?
How long?
Yeah.
I'm not on it anymore. Yes, I strike that from my profile, so we don't really talk about that. But no, I was on it a very long time ago, and that again was by chance. Just I used to work in a nightclub, Mahiki. I met Binky and Ollie in the show, became friends with them, and the show kind of invited me on. I hated it. It was awful. I thought it was just this world that, I mean, it's not a real world, and I actually found it quite difficult. So that was the first time I went on, and from there, I'm trying to think back now. From there, yeah, I was still working in the music industry. I was in a girl band for a while. I think that was after Maid in Chelsea. So I got in a girl band for a while. We were put together for X Factor, which was a whole nother drama. A big drama that didn't work out. And yeah, I went to Monaco and met Shmi this is the time when I had no money. I was not sure what to do next. I'd just been let go from a musical theatre job, or it ended, the contract had ended, and I was sat there doing nothing. And somebody called me saying, you had an events company in South Africa. My friend is going to Monaco. He's hosting these people on a yacht for the F1, and he's looking for somebody to help him look after the VIPs. And I was like, that's me. I'm the person. How much are they paying? And they were like, no, it's not paid. But you get this amazing experience of being in Monaco and watching the Formula One. And I was like, wow, I've never seen a Formula One ever other than the TV. And what a place to go to Monaco to watch your first Formula One. So I was like, okay, I've got nothing to lose. So I went. And it was the worst job of my life in terms of not being paid, overworked, treated pretty badly. But it was the change in my career of meeting the right people at the right time. And it was Shmi, his manager, a racing driver, and somebody else with a racing car on the boat that I looked after, that I ended up talking to and networking and pursuing those friendships and relationships that set the kind of road to getting my license, start a YouTube channel, and to where I am now.
So that is a lot of people that you met in a short period of time. Just to touch on it, because it's a question on my list, and I think you touched on it, it's not a real world. Are things like the Love Islands of this world, the Maid in Chelsea's, what is that like for someone being on that show, and how staged are those shows?
It's really difficult to tell, because if you've been on a show for a long time, you know exactly how they work. You know what parts are going to be filmed. You know which sentences they're going to keep as memes, as GIFs, whatever. You kind of know how to work a show. And I found that was the problem for me going on the show, is they're not going on to, I mean, it was sold to me that, you know, your entrance scene will be driving a Ferrari on track. And I think my management at the time was like, go on, it might boost your profile, and they told me I could sing on there, I could dance. And at the time I was doing stunts as well. So I was in the movie industry doing stunts. So they had all these.
Of course you were.
Oh, of course I was. Little ninja. So they were like, oh, you can do this, you can do that. And, you can showcase all your talents. And I was like, this will be great for my profile. Innocent, young, completely naive to the fact that it's a reality show and they want drama, of course. So the first thing that happened when I went on was the story was made up about me. And I was like, what's going on right now? Like, I don't understand why you're saying this when it's not true. And it was really confusing. So very difficult to understand who your friends were and who was acting and who, because a lot of it was real. I mean, they go on what you're telling them. So each person has a producer and they have to believe what you're saying, and you're supposed to tell them the truth about everything that's happening. So when you have two producers with two different cast or talent and they're saying two different stories, of course they're like, oh, this is brilliant, this is going to cause drama, let's bring them on.
Does it start playing with your mind though? Because do you feel like you have to be, the more dramatic you are, the longer you'll stay there? And I'm guessing there's also a financial gain to stay in there as well, with being on a show like that.
I mean, strategy for sure, which is not what I went in with. I think even when I went in the second time, I didn't want to go on the second time, but I had no strategy. I was dating somebody who was already on the show, and they were like, you need to come on, or he was like, you need to come on, either we're on it together or we're not. It's not, you don't want to date somebody who's on the show without you. It's just a recipe for disaster. And they love to cause drama. And I think he was naive at the time, thinking that we'd have this really fun, wonderful relationship on TV, where I'm like, they want drama. And that's exactly what they got. So I'm an actress. Like, I could have acted through the whole thing, but it didn't feel right to me at the time. And I also didn't care enough, I think, to be on the show longer than expected. I didn't want that in my life. It was a lot of drama and unnecessary arguments and bad vibes that I didn't want. I had a career.
Do you think it did anything for your personal profile and what you're in now in motorsports? So do you think if you just totally removed and erased that from your story, do you think you'd be in exactly the same place?
I have erased it in my mind. It's gone.
We'll stop asking about it in a minute then. No, Motorsport creator Emma.
Other things. No, I didn't gain a following from it. My following was created when I started YouTube. When I started racing cars, I had maybe 7,000 followers, I think, before that. So it really wasn't. It didn't boost anything for me in terms of profile, and I kept it under the radar. Like, don't talk about it much.
But do you sound like, with all of this stuff, and potentially it's the reason that you've got opportunities that you've got, it seems like you just grab every opportunity that comes in front of you and say yes. Is that how you are now?
I try to. I mean, look, I'm an overthinker, so I'll definitely think of the pros and cons of everything. But I do feel like, and I've definitely put myself in these positions for sure, where I get offered some really cool things, and I think, why say no? Like, you don't know where that's going to lead to. So I do often say yes to stuff, and I'm often terrified. And I say yes anyway. I'm like, this is scary. Which,
last night I spoke to your friend Talia.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know, we had such a good time. And she actually said a really lovely quote about you, that she would be absolutely nowhere without the support of her best friend, and that you are simply amazing, and that you've always been there, and that you were extremely tough. But when I started also quizzing Talia about some other things to try and find out what she would get across as someone that really knows you, rather than someone that only gets an hour inside of studio to try and get to know you.
And they're different people, by the way, those two Emmas.
She told me that you're very introverted.
Right.
From her perspective, which for somebody that is hosting thousands of people on the ground at the NEC, or with a microphone in their hand, or on TV, those two things most people wouldn't think go together. So do you just become extroverted when you've got a microphone in front of you? How does that work?
I love a microphone. I think I don't know which way around.
Introverted extrovert.
Yeah, whichever way around that is. I think Miss Emma Walsh is definitely the stage version of me. I think I know how to switch it on when I have to. I think that comes from performing and being a dancer and a singer on stage. No matter what was going on in your life, you'd come on stage and you'd perform like it was your first time. So I definitely think that element from the performer world has kind of crossed over into this world. I think the older I get, the more introverted I get. I find things overwhelming. I think this industry and this life can be very full on, and I often have these big jobs, like after Autosport. I'm like, Talia knows, like Monday, like I don't want to talk to anyone. Like I want a whole day of silence. Also because you got screeching cars in your ear for 5 shows a day. So
is it 5 a day of those shows?
It was, yeah.
Of saying the same things as well, over and over and over again.
Same jokes, same everything. First time, ha ha ha. Crofty's dad jokes. Ha ha.
How did you learn, though, how to do that? Or was the first time that you picked up a microphone in one of those shows, it just comes naturally?
I still get scared. I'm not going to lie. Like I get imposter syndrome all the time. I think practice makes perfect. With the Autosport show, we quite literally put the show together the day before. In terms of the script, Crofty and I put it together the night before the press show. So come the press show on Thursday, I'm pretty terrified, because you don't know how the show's going. You haven't quite learnt your script well enough. And I like to be prepared. He likes to go off script.
Yeah, he's always there with his notes, isn't he?
We both have the same notes. We both have our lines that we have to say. It's we can add in anything we want. It's not a strict script, but I am a script person. Like, I come from the land of acting where you learn your lines. And so that's just that's how I work. He is brilliant at like just talking. So he's great at just coming up with things on the spot or filling a gap. Or the Saturday morning, I got told the day before, they were like, oh, by the way, Crofty's not doing the 10 a.m. show. And I was like, sorry? They were like, we just done one version of the show. And now I had to change the whole show so that I was running the whole thing. And I was absolutely terrified, because it's the filling where the problem is for me. It's like, if there's a crash, you have to fill that gap for as long as it takes.
And you had a crash, right?
I had 4 crashes in my show.
You had 4 crashes in the show. Well, our dear friend and previous guest of the podcast, Mr. Mark McCann, was involved.
In the show.
So I did wonder if it was him at any point, but
no, it wasn't
I think
him.
he escaped unscathed.
No, he was great. He was great. It wasn't him. And it was part of the races, like the autograss and those cross cars and stuff. So they had crashes during the show. So I just had them in my inner ear being like, they're still clearing the stage, just full for 3 minutes. And I was like, okay, we're doing a selfie. Everybody get the lights up. And I got my phone out. I was like, everybody say yay. And it's those moments where you just have to, and that, I think that just takes practice, and Crofty's great at doing that. So when I'm trying to be on script and he's off script, or he's saying my lines, or sometimes you get thrown. And I think, by Saturday and Sunday, you're doing so many shows, it just kind of comes second nature. But yeah, I do still get nervous when I do stuff like that.
Well, for fans like me, that's the environment that we're used to seeing you in. And you touched on the fact that because you took an opportunity to go and host guests on a yacht in Monaco watching the Formula One.
Sounds wonderful.
Unpaid.
Sounds wonderful. Unpaid. Outrageous.
You actually met the likes of Tim Schumacher 150, and you mentioned his manager Mark was on the boat as well, and other people. So did just meeting those people and seeing what they do, did that make you go, I now want to become a YouTuber?
No. Not at all. I didn't even know what YouTube was. It wasn't that popular back then. I think this was 8 years ago. I don't even know when YouTube started. It wasn't a thing for me. I had no idea who Tim Schumacher, I didn't even know who he was. It was such a new world for me. But, they kind of opened my eyes, and Mark and Tim were so kind. I looked after them all weekend, and they were just super nice to me. And I was so interested in cars and racing. I had so many questions, and they were like, well, if you really like racing, we've got this track day in Spain, I think it was. Do you want to come and join us? And of course, I was like, yeah, absolutely. And
of course you said yes.
In my brain, I've got no money. I'm like, how am I going to get to Spain? I remember being on that trip being so broke. And it was one of those, where they're like, oh, buy your lunch and expense it kind of moment. And I remember just having like a panic attack, being like, how am I going to pay for lunch and then expense it? I was so broke at the time. But I just really just made the most of that weekend. I was like, right, this job is not great. I'm working, 20 hours a day. They're making us walk 2 hours home to get to our apartment. Like, it was pretty savage. But I was like, how can I turn this around? And I just networked the hell out of that event and met the right people, and then continued to make sure that I was in contact with them. And it kind of went from there.
So as you mentioned, you've got this network of people that you've suddenly built. You've met people through absolute pure chance by just taking opportunities as taking opportunities as you see them in front of you. Mm-hmm. Do you think it is okay morally to have strategic friendships when trying to build a career or a personal brand?
Is that a trick question? Yes and no. There's two sides. Of course you have to network with the right people to get the right jobs. I'm not great at faking friendships. So
yeah, and you're an actress.
And I am an actress, believe it or not, because I'm a massive empath as well. And I also have been used throughout my career, and I don't like the feeling. It's not a nice feeling. I've lost a lot of friends through that, really. So I think there's an understanding in the industry of being work friends and being friends, and a mutual agreement sometimes where you are helping each other in the industry. And I think that's okay. I think a lot of us need help. I think there isn't enough help. And if you're working in the same industry, you get on, you can mutually benefit each other. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Now, most people would try and ask this question in a way that they would already believe that there's a huge difficulty or a huge problem, but I'm going to structure it a little bit differently. Annoyingly, every episode that a woman in motorsport comes onto, no doubt the whole topic comes up about, it must be really hard to be a woman in a male-dominated environment. It's just the normal question. Yeah. But the question that I'd kind of like to spin it on is, we see you on stage at Autosport. To us, you've done a brilliant job. No one even is, well, certainly from my group and the people I hang around with thinks, oh, she's done really well because she's a woman. We're just like, oh, Emma's brilliant at hosting with Crofty. Does it still exist, and do you experience difficulty being a woman in motorsport?
Yeah, of course. I think it's very difficult though, because it's like me saying to Crofty, oh, people are only interested in what you have to say because you're a male. Like, it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? I get it. Women in motorsport are new. Yes, it's still difficult. I've had maybe 50% of people who are horrible and not supportive and don't like the change and don't respect you. But I've also had a lot of men in the industry who have been very helpful in my career. So
where do you see that? Is it on social media, on comments, on TV reports, on management? Where do you actually see the negative impacts, if you know what I mean?
YouTube was a very negative place, I felt. It's not the main reason why I stopped doing YouTube, but I did find a lot of negativity on YouTube. I find it in the industry. Listen, hey, any industry is difficult. This industry is particularly difficult, especially when you're up against other people. Not everyone's supportive of you coming into the industry. I've had a hard time. I haven't always had, like I said, this has been a second career that I wasn't quite always looking to get into. I always wanted to be a presenter. It was part of my performing life. So presenting for sure. And then of course I loved F1. So at the time it kind of made sense. So it's taken a long time to kind of get on the right path to presenting. And I feel like it's taken a long time to get there, but also I don't feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. So when you're jumping in and out of F1 or any other championship, not everyone is supportive of you being there. I think I remember leaving Silverstone the one year, and according to my socials, it was the best weekend ever. And it was great, but I remember driving home and crying the whole way home. I felt so unwelcomed. I felt like people didn't want me there or support me there.
Or appreciate your F1 knowledge.
100%, yeah. So yeah, you get it in the industry, you get it online, you get it with people you work with who maybe are, I think all performers and people are a little bit insecure. So I think sometimes if I'm working with a man and he's feeling insecure, there's those little digs like constantly that you're just like about being a girl in the industry. So I think you get it from everywhere, really. It's not always just online.
Is that like, oh, it's okay for you, you're pretty, etc.? Or
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we've watched you in F1, and am I right to say you've also done IndyCar?
Yeah, I did a job with Indy, yeah.
So is the States very different for you presenting than the UK? Is there any differences, or?
I actually find America in general a lot more welcoming.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah. I found that even in the performing world, singing and dancing, I feel like when I was over there, I used to do movies, I did musical theatre, I sang, I danced, I acted. And when you're over there, they're like, oh my God, you can do everything. That's so great. When I came to the UK, they were like, well, you can't do movie acting and musical theatre. You have to choose one. I was like, I don't want to choose one. I want to do them both. Like I was doing Grease and I was also doing a stunt film and acting in this, and I was in a girl band. Like, why can't I do all three? It. Yeah. So I do feel like in the UK, it's a little less welcoming than
the UK. Simon Durham, who owns Urban Automotive, company, I think he summed it up brilliantly. He said he thinks the UK is the most negative nation of all of them. He's like, we take a car to the US and it's like love, love, love. You make one mistake with the car in the UK and it's just like your brand's written off.
Yeah.
So getting somewhere in the UK does seem to be a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
But how what I want to understand is, what does a week in the life of Emma look like? What does that week kind of look like when you're presenting, doing all these different jobs, and how do you piece that together into like a monthly Liverpool income as well, if you know what I mean? Because it's so all over the place, if you know what I mean. Do you just live like by the moment, or is there planning throughout a whole year?
It depends what week it is. This week is, I have not one job lined up for this year. So January for me is a very stressful time of the year. And I'm not saying this for like, oh, woe is me. Like, this is the job that I've chosen, and I love it. But yes, January can be quite stressful. I think everyone's getting their plans together for the year, and not everything's been put on the table. But that is the freelancing world. Like, you don't know what's coming up, which can, to a lot of people is overwhelming. And I feel overwhelmed this week. So yeah, definitely it's hard. So this week is now about getting in touch with people I worked with last year, sending my show reel off. The hustle is on in January. And
that's insane. So someone that we literally watched on a main performance stage in front of thousands of people last week, to all of us who clearly looks like they've got everything sorted, stood out there doing that, is now this week going,
help me. Yeah, for sure. And it's constant throughout the year. It's like last year was extremely busy for me. I was super grateful. So you're either very, very busy when I'm like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, I need a break, or it comes to January and, last year was full on. I don't feel like I've had a break at all. I hit the ground. I love Autosport, but it is right in the beginning of the year. So you don't get much of a break. And then I get to January and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing this year at all.
It's all really cold and there's not a lot of car stuff going on.
Why am I not in Cape Town? Yeah.
So from entering that world and doing all the things, and I think we should actually touch quickly to bring into all of those things. Stunt driving?
Yeah.
How the hell do you do that? Has that just come from go-karting? Yeah, where'd you start?
It's crashing professionally, basically. The first stunt job I ever did was through my dancing friend's husband. So he was the stunt director in South Africa. They needed a small girl who looked like a child, basically was the description, to drive a car backwards through a house for a insurance advert. So you had to ramp it through the kitchen, like just smash everything up basically. And I was like, oh my God, I'll do that for sure. So that was my first kind of introduction to stunts, and they strap you in and they teach you how to crash, and they pull the car backwards through a house and you're crashing through everything. And I was like, this is kind of fun. So I started doing more stunts. I did the Scorpion King, so that was all the fight scenes in that, and then I did a few movies. So I love the stunt driving, blowing up tires, like I love being on set. So that was really cool for me. And then Terry and I had a really big stunt accident last year, which wasn't actually even part of the plans. On the media day, we ramped the truck and basically crashed it. So
you and Terry Grant.
Yeah. Did you not see it last year?
No, explain. Was this Autosport?
It was at Autosport, and it was on media day, and everyone was filming, and it's a big finale. And I mean, it's a stunt show anyway. He is a stunt guy, and everyone was like, whoa. And they were just confused. They were like, is this part of the show or not? But yeah, we completely rolled the car. And Terry was like, well, you said you're a stunt girl, so you have to prove,
you were absolutely
one
fine.
Day, yeah. Luckily, we were absolutely fine. My neck was pretty sore for the year, but no, we were fine. We were both very lucky to.
Yeah, because Mr. McCann is pretty beat up. You said a funny sentence. You said you're a professional stunt driver. Well, I think Mark is an unprofessional stunt driver because he does it in his back garden half the time.
He's crazy. I've seen some of his stuff.
Incredible.
It's very cool.
Unhinged would also be
unhinged
maybe
is
a word.
A great word,
to use. But out of all of those moments, what would you say has been one of the peaks for you? What's one of your favourite things that you've achieved through kind of doing everything you love?
I've had some really amazing highlights over the couple of years for sure. I think anything to do with driving is great. We got to drift Lamborghinis in the ice. Like that was pretty epic, learning how to do stuff like that. And just getting those experiences in general is pretty amazing. And we don't get paid for stuff like that. Anything press trip is not paid. So anyone would be like, oh, I do that for free, which you would, but you're working that when that's your job, you start. I mean, I worked for free for the first couple of years, 2-3 years.
But then I'll challenge that with you were making content at the time, no, for YouTube. So there's a form of income off the back of it if you can get it to get views. On YouTube. If the views aren't there.
I think the most I ever made on YouTube in 1 month was £800.
Wow.
it was low. People thought I was making money on YouTube. I really wasn't. It was bad. But YouTube was never my goal, and also because I'm not
Is it a show reel?
For sure, yeah. I think it was I started without a plan. So I was getting all these cool experiences that I was filming, and I thought, this is great. I'm building up a profile. I'm being asked to drive these supercars, and I had some amazing people in Ferrari and McLaren who gave me an opportunity. But the only reason they gave me the opportunity is because I had my race license. They trusted me with the car. So it all kind of fell into place, and I had this profile going on YouTube, but I wasn't making any money. So I worked for free for a really long time. And eventually I just had to be like, I can't do this anymore. If I'm going to make a career and switch over, I'm going to have to start charging. But it was a weird time. I was one of the first female YouTubers in the UK to start following in like Tim and Sam and Seb's footsteps. So there wasn't really a path for me. So I had to kind of create it myself. And it was really challenging. I loved it. But yeah, sure, it was challenging as well.
So what have been some of the highlights of your career?
I think starting off was probably interviewing Sebastian Vettel. That was quite a pinch me moment in the sense that nobody really done that kind of content before. So I was terrified, but he was so nice. He was like, Emma, just relax, ask me anything you want. So he made that a really great experience. And the fact that I beat him on the sim. Technically, I beat him on the sim because he crashed out. So that was really fun. I think last year was a really big moment for me working with Red Bull. That was a job that I got asked to do that I wasn't actually even in the country for. But this is the kind of moment where I'm like, I thank past Emma for making an effort to make these jobs happen. I had to rearrange an entire job in Canada. I bought 2 flights home just to make sure that I arrived on the morning of the job. I had my car and my makeup artist waiting at the airport for me. She did my makeup in the car on the way to this Red Bull job to make sure that I got the job done, because I thought there was going to be a really good job for me to get involved in. But yeah, that was a really pinch me moment working with Max and Checo and Christian. That was quite a big high. But yeah, I have to put the effort in. You've got to put the effort in. A lot of these jobs don't just come to you. So
how does someone though, I really struggle to see in your story where the catalyst moment was of change, where you went from the broke girl on the boat to with Max and Checo doing an interview.
It's wild, isn't it?
Where was it? Do you remember that change moment?
I remember my first ever paid job for YouTube. And I was like, wow, they offered me the fee. I had no idea what the fee was in this industry, but they were like, right, we can pay you X amount. And it was with Seen Through Glass. We both went to Italy. I think it was Abarth was the job. And I was like, whoa, I can actually get paid for this. And I was like, that's cool. And it went from there. But I think last year was probably my best year career-wise in terms of actually getting paid what I think I'm worth. And the job with Alfa Romeo last year was probably a big turnaround point for me.
What was that?
We did a small series on talking about the car, the drivers, the steering wheel. It was just a short burst of episodes that I collaborated with Alfa Romeo and the F1 team. So that was pretty cool. I was sat in a Zoom meeting with like 50 people, and I was like, what's happening right now? Because I still get those moments when I'm like, this is crazy. Like 13-year-old Emma on a go-karting track would just not believe that I'm sat here talking to these team owners and CEOs, and they're looking to me for ideas and content and production, and it's pretty cool.
What out of all of those moments, all of those heights, all of those bits that you loved, was there a moment that you had the come down off the back of it? As you said, like last week you were presenting all week at Autosport. This week you find yourself with almost nothing to do for the rest of the year trying to find work. Is there a point where you've just thought, the whole presenting, everything that I want to do, I just can't do this anymore?
I have that monthly. Happens all the time. There's some big highs, and then there's some really, really big lows as well. And I think people don't see the work that goes on behind the social media, the 4 stories a day. It takes up 20 seconds of your day. People are kind of assuming that that's your entire day. People don't see I sounding like I don't like what I do. I love what I do, but for sure, there are massive highs and massive lows. You come off the back of a job, it's incredible, but then you have to find the next job. So it's like you're up here and then you're back to no job and then you have to find the next job.
For someone that's willing to do so much as well and sort of say yes to such an array of opportunities, is it kind of hard to stay actually focused on the goal and the thing that you want to achieve and not get dragged off in another direction?
Yeah. For someone who says yes to everything. Yeah, I think so. I think it's because I always had a goal of being a pop star. So that when I was in the performing industry, I knew that that's kind of where I wanted to get. Whereas when this all started, it was more, I'm getting to do all these cool things. Look, Dad, I'm working in F1, you know, from watching it on the sofa with you. Look, I'm interviewing Sebastian Vettel. Like, I'm the first female YouTuber to do this. And
that's got to be a pinch me moment, right?
For sure. But I think at the time, you're just like, I don't even know what's going on right now, what's happening. And I look back now and I'm like, my goodness, I was the first person to kind of introduce that in the UK. I didn't know that back then because I was just going with whatever was coming up in front of me. But I look back now and, you know, Sam, Seen Through Glass, and I were the two people they chose to work with, Scuderia Ferrari, and interview Sebastian Vettel. And I had a challenge with him on the sim and I had all this content. And I was like, that's cool. But that path wasn't, like, I had to create that path along the way. And I don't ever think I had this end goal of what I wanted to do because there wasn't anybody that I could look at and be like, oh, I want to do that, like I could with the pop star thing.
Is the Formula One the end goal though? Being a mainstream presenter for F1? Because you're at Vegas.
I love F1. I really do. I really love F1 for sure. I would love to be involved in that a lot more. I like doing the personality. Like, I got into it more because I wanted to interview people to get more of a personality. When I was in F1 in the beginning, the answers were strict. Like, you couldn't ask them anything. They couldn't talk about anything personal. Obviously, everything has massively changed now because of TikTok, and, you know, the drivers are doing all sorts of videos, which is really, really cool. So I got into it because I wanted to bring in that personality of the teams and the drivers. So for sure, I'd love to be involved in that. Maybe interviewing people on the stage, still the entertainment side of things. I really look up to Natalie Pinkham. I think she's incredible. And she's definitely paved a way for women in the industry, as well as Rachel Brooks and Laura Winter. But I wouldn't want to be doing that kind of presenting. That's not my end goal. For me, it would probably always be more the entertainment side of things, a TV show, a bit of F1, a bit of everything.
And how hard are those opportunities to come by? How do you look? How do you find? For girl, there's as you say, there's a TikTok wave. I've got a friend of mine, Grace, who's gained over 50,000 followers in a year, producing content on TikTok for just a pure love of motorsport and cars and her passion. So, is there any element of also competitiveness against other women for the jobs and the seats?
Yeah, for
What's
sure.
it like?
Well, obviously everything's changed for me now. There was only a handful of us doing this kind of stuff before. Now everyone's an F1 expert and has got a TikTok channel about F1. You can literally make any video about F1 now. And it's so popular. Drive to Survive obviously boosted the sport massively, which is incredible. But everyone is now an F1 expert and they have this following to kind of boost their way through into work. And I think it's great. I love seeing more women in the industry, but there's a fine line between who you're giving the work to. Are they experienced enough? Are they right for the job? Are you using them because they've got now a big following? Are they the right people? So I think last year was a big test in this industry.
What are you like as a negotiator? The introverted extrovert. When you've got to figure out how you're getting to Vegas, stand in front of a microphone, present, and then make it pay and come back with some money off the back of doing what you love, which they know you love doing what you love. How do you make that work? How do you negotiate something that you really want, but it's their chance to give it to you?
I think I can be quite savage. But I also think I've earned my right to ask for the right amount of money now. It's been a long time that I've worked free and worked in this industry. And I also, but sometimes you lose, eh? Sometimes I'm like, well, listen, I I'm not going to. I also don't want the industry to. I think it's difficult when you're all in the same job and then somebody's underquoting or is not getting paid the right amount of money for that job. That's difficult. And if you start underquoting just because you want the job, the whole industry is going to suffer, I feel. So there are times when I'm like, God, I'd love to do that job. And they're like, we just don't have the budget. So I need to decide whether I'm just going to do it for free or do it for less, or whether I'm going to stick to my guns and be like.
Have you ever said no
to
something that you've really wanted to do?
Yeah, I have.
And do you regret it?
No. I mean,
because you're the person that always says yes is what we're learning.
It's so difficult. It's difficult because you get stuff offered on a plate. They're like, yeah, but then they're like, oh, this is amazing experience. And you're like, but it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. And I'm very grateful, but this is now my job. Like I still have to pay my rent and I have to eat and I have to live. Going away for a week and doing this without getting paid, you can't always say yes to everything.
Do you have a backup plan?
No. What's a backup plan?
So I would ask, but it's kind of where from here? What does the rest of the year look like? But you kind of answered that a few questions back. But is it a case that if you're going to work this life, if is a message to maybe young content creators, women that want to go into presenting, is it a case of sometimes it is just a little bit chaos and you've got to be willing to live kind of step by step?
Yeah. And I can be quite a control freak. I like things I like to know what's happening. I like to know the script. I like to know all aspects of the job, and I like to manage myself because I know what works and what doesn't. I like to produce the content, and so there is an element to having to let go sometimes because you can't be in control of what's going on. I make it sound like I don't know what I'm doing. I obviously have some things in the pipeline for the year, and I know that January, 8 years of doing this, I know January is always the month where it's slightly unstable, but stuff always comes in. So I don't feel panicked anymore. It's not nice not knowing, I guess, but I've got some things in the pipeline which could be very exciting. What's
the single most important thing that you've done for yourself during your career that's enabled you to have the opportunities that you've got? As a piece of advice to another content creator or girl willing to get somewhere, what is a personality trait that has allowed you to get to where you are?
I think I would say being good with people, as much as sometimes I like to not be around people.
Your friend said you hate people.
She would say that. She hates people as well. No, that's why we live so well together. No, I don't hate people. I think because my year can be quite chaotic, I do like to I'm quite a homebody. I'm quite a chilled person on the other side of the Miss Emma Walsh. But I think being good with people in terms of making the connections, keeping the connections, and I say yes to things that are scary.
Alongside the Miss Emma Walsh.
Yeah.
So how much of an act do you go into when you're becoming Miss Emma Walsh, and why is it Miss Emma Walsh?
Well, that was always on my post. When the post came in, it said Miss Emma Walsh. And when I got announced on stage, it was like, here's Miss Emma Walsh. And I was just like, well, that's kind of a stage name. And it was a name that wasn't, a lot of YouTubers choose names that aren't their names. And I thought that was easier to just be myself. I didn't want to be anybody else. I'd been acting everybody else my entire career. So I thought, why not just have my name? But I think the Miss Emma Walsh is the confident version of me. I think I get on stage and it's you switch on that act. And I say act, it's still me. It's just like probably a more talkative, more confident version of myself.
Well, I look forward to seeing you for sure on screens for the rest of the year. I have no idea which ones they'll be. I'm very much hoping it'll be Formula One, because that is something that myself and assistant Steve absolutely love to watch. It's been a pleasure to have you here talking about how you've got to where you are today and all the things that make up Miss Emma Walsh. Thank you very much. And for everybody that's watching or listening, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and hopefully we'll be chatting to Emma again in the future. Thank you.